Well, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Midwest Whitetail After Hours podcast. We're coming at you with episode 2 today. And before we get to that, jumping back to episode 1 with Owen and the Loch Ness story. From all of us at Midwest Whitetail, thank you so much for taking the time to watch the podcast, for all the overwhelming comments of positivity. Jumping to the episode, hope you guys enjoyed that. We have gotten more comments than probably on any other episode congratulating Owen. And from all of us, it really means a lot when you guys take the time to do that. Lets us know that we're doing things right. We're always open to any feedback that you can send our way. And big shout out to Gavin Koterba. He's our lead editor here at Midwest Whitetail. So, he's the one bringing you Chasing November. He's the one bringing those Monday shows your way. And he really works his tail off for us here and everybody that enjoys a Midwest Whitetail product. So on episode 2, though, we're going to be joining Gavin in the hunting scenario. On episode 1, we talked about a successful story. Today, we're going to be talking about one that maybe didn't end the way that we had hoped. Gavin's been busting his tail on public land, and he finally got a shot at a really big deer that he's been hunting all season. So we're going to dive into what his setup was, what his mindset was that found him in that spot for a shot opportunity on that October 14th cold front, and then finally, all of his decision-making and thought process following the shot. I think there's a lot to unpack. I hope you guys have questions. If you have them, please drop them in the comments and we'll try to answer them. And if there's anything you want us to cover on upcoming podcasts, please let us know. But before we get to the podcast, one quick reminder, you can find our content on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Midwest Whitetail Daily Channel, Midwest Whitetail Regional, and the Midwest Whitetail platform that you're watching this podcast on. So hope you guys enjoy this one. Appreciate you tuning in. Let's get to that intro, and then following that, we're going to jump right into the action. All right, we are at October 20th. We got Gavin Koterba here. Mike Reed is back from the mountains. And Owen, you look like you're recording a mixtape.
Oh, yeah. I'm ready today, boys. Yeah.
New school. I love it. I'm jealous.
Yeah.
So what's it been like since you saw the episode? Now that it's kind of all settling in, does it still feel maybe not real? Cloud 9, is that a good example, good term?
Yeah, I think definitely Cloud 9. I mean, I've gotten just so much feedback that's been probably the biggest, thing to get used to. So many people reaching out to me. Not used to that, but it's been really cool. And like I said, I mean, it's just hard to come down off Cloud 9, never had that before. So it's been fun.
Yeah, I mean, between the last podcast that we did, I mean, this is a great opportunity from all of us. Thank you so much for, the kind words you sent Owen's way, for the, just engaging on the episode, on this, like I said, the previous podcast, all the blogs. I mean, you guys make this possible. So, I mean, it's just from a distance, like I felt super happy and positive and excited with how much outpouring support. It's kind of like I told you, it's just like, you're the guy. You're so easy to root for. And now it's, everybody's asking the big question, what's next? Because
yeah,
I'm in the woods, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I haven't been out since. I've been just kind of monitoring trail cameras, checking SD cards and trying to find that next buck that I want to chase. And I've got one in mind that is just a real nice 8. It's kind of tripping my trigger. So I've been just kind of trying to watch him and seeing when he's going to get close to daylight, where he's at right now and when he's moving. I think I'd have to get closer to his bedroom in order to catch him. So I know I talked about this was a couple of weeks ago on the main show that, my success rates went way up when I started hunting less and just really picking my spots. Like I feel like it's high odds day, and then you go on that day,
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm at right now, just looking at this next cold front coming.
Mike, how you been?
Yeah, I'm doing well. It's good to be back. I hunted tonight. It's the first time in a week or more, 8-9 days. I mean, brother got married. It was a fun trip, quick trip, 4-day trip out west. Took the kids to the Grand Canyon, Monument Valley, got to see all the family. It was a great time. Nobody got hurt, even though they tried, so it was it's a lot of fun. We rented a dinger of an RV and rattled down the road, and just good family fun. And certainly good to get back. Busy at work, things going a little crazy everywhere, but I feel like just in time today, got everything settled down. I'm ready to put some time in the tree Had a nice hunt today. Saw Gavin and I went sit out and saw 20 deer or so. So it was nice. All in the last hour. Good activity. No mature bucks, but just fun to be out. Beautiful weather, and looking forward to this front in the end of October.
Yeah. So speaking of cold fronts, obviously Mike just talked about that he was out west. Owen's been trying to find a target. What we're going to talk about in this episode is going to be the previous cold front that blew through Iowa, which was actually October 14th, middle of the October lull, and opening day of muzzleloader season. A lot of hunters had some success, but Gavin, he's got a really good story to share with us. Last week we talked about a story that had 100% success. This week we're going to talk about one that was 99% there. I think, Gavin, before we dive into what actually occurred, give us a little bit of background, public land hunting, why'd you do it? How was that, where did you start out in Ohio? Because I know we know kind of your background, but, maybe folks who have never heard of you, Gavin's our lead editor. Every episode you're watching on Monday, he is the one putting in all the time, blood, sweat, and tears to create those best stories possible. So big shout out to Gavin before we dive into the, hunting side of this, but floor is yours, my friend. Tell us about
Yes. So basically I came out here in 2021 as an intern, and been doing this ever since. I love this job. I mean, it's a blessing getting to do this, but I'm a relatively new bow hunter in terms of I haven't been doing it for my entire life. I really started doing it when I was 18, getting into college. Got my first bow when I was 18, and so just kind of took off from there. But going to college, I could have had some opportunities to just do some door knocking and everything, but there was public land real close within 20 minutes of school. And so between classes and stuff, and, kind of, if I'm being honest, molding my schedule so that I could have, those a free morning or whatever, being able to still get out and do some hunting, and, found, like I said, some good public spots, and quickly found out through, lots of trial and error of learning the ropes of hunting and everything, that there were big deer out there, and a few of them. And so I hunted those spots a lot because I was, scouting and learning these pieces as I was going. So it, had lots of great encounters. Ended up shooting one in 2019, my senior year of college out there. And that was a big accomplishment for me. It's not a big deer by any means, but to shoot one on public land and do it yourself type thing, it was pretty awesome for me, so fast forward to 2021, I like I said, got the internship here and moved out here, and long story short, we did a little bit of hunting that year as interns, just between getting work done, and was able to slip out a few times. And Ethan Stubbs and he was another intern with me. He and I hunted that one morning. I think it was November 7th, if I'm remembering correctly, and had a great encounter with a deer on a piece of public that we had scouted over the summer. And he was at 25 yards, but we kind of set up poorly, and at the end of the day weren't able to get a shot off at him. But he was a great deer, like I said. And then from there got hired on full time, and kind of stuck with knowing that public was full of deer, that I had gotten plenty of other good deer on there, that it was a good spot. So I stuck with that, found another piece that was, a similar type piece as far as the layout. It's river bottom type ground, and, thick, nasty stuff, lots of different habitat types, and lots of diversity and things like that. So two main public pieces that I hunt. And then, just between learning or meeting new people around, was able to secure some permission. So I have 2 permission farms basically, and 2 pieces of public land that I hunt. Anyway, so that kind of brings us up to speed here. We had, of course, that big encounter with that big deer last year. Still kind of speechless about that one. I mean, it's still a heartbreaker in the fact that he was within bow range for about 20 minutes or so. And with it being so thick in that area, partially because of that, partially because I was in a tree saddle, I probably would have been set up a little bit better had I been in a hang-on stand in that specific location. I probably could have been able to squeeze a shot through there, but just wasn't able to. Didn't feel comfortable making a shot that was, through brush and things like that, and just didn't want to potentially injure the animal. So ended up passing him and hunting all year last year after him. Was never able to encounter him again. But then fast forward to this year, had my sights set on these 4 pieces, and I was really looking forward to this year for the fact that, between moving around after college and everything, it's been a few years since I've hunted the same pieces multiple years in a row. Knowing the history, knowing like deer patterns and things like that. It's nice. It was nice going into this year. Gave me that little bit of extra confidence going into this year that, I had a pretty good shot. And so put some cameras out, did some scouting. I was doing Chasing November all summer, and so didn't really get to do a ton of just scouting throughout the entire off season, but did a little bit, got some cameras hung. And the nice thing is that I knew these areas pretty well already. So I knew, boom, I wanted to put cameras here, 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 and here, and was able to be efficient from that standpoint. So got cameras out, did some elk hunting in September, and no sooner than I got out to Montana, elk hunting as in filming, not actually hunting myself, although I wish, but we were, out there and was starting to get pictures coming in, and there was a great 6x5 that showed up. He was actually a deer that I knew from the previous year, had gotten some pictures of him. Was clearly the same deer, had the same little kicker off his G2, the same right side, except this year it had gotten much bigger, obviously the same deer. And so I was pretty excited about that. And he was super consistent all throughout September. There was a stretch mid-September where I was getting him, I think, like 9 or 10 days in a row. Every night he'd come hit the scrapes, and it was looking pretty promising from that.
Was that all daylight?
A few daylights here and there. I remember sending you one where, he was in daylight at like 4 p.m., 4 or 5 p.m. And, I was excited. I was like, man, he's got to be bedding close. And I'm sure he was in certain circumstances, maybe certain wind directions or whatnot. But, as we got closer to October, he definitely wasn't super consistent in daylight. Just, probably 4 or 5 times total that I got him in daylight. Ended up, I think October 2nd was the first set of pictures that I got, but ended up getting another 6x5 in there who was a little bit more mature. Both were still mature deer for sure, but he was just a stud of a 6x5, a great typical frame, a split brow, and just a beautiful deer, and pretty much a giant for public land as far as I'm concerned. So really exciting to get both of those. And but otherwise, I wasn't getting many pictures of other mature bucks on permission farms or anything like that. So going into the season was kind of setting my sights on those two. That first cold front that rolled around and on the 6th or the 7th or something like that, pretty similar to last year.
13 died. Yeah. I don't remember that cold front.
There, yeah, there was a couple deer that died, and I think Owen might be able to remember that one, but he's like, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, so that one, we hunted that one a couple days in a row, didn't have much action or anything, and maybe hunted one more time after that once the weather kind of stabilized and whatever. And then there was a stretch for about 4 or 5 days or whatever that I didn't hunt. There was just catching up on work and things like that. And between that period, I didn't. So we're somewhere in the, October 10th, somewhere in there. And I was not getting pictures of either 6x5. And so, going into last week's cold front, it was clear that it was going to be a good one. The big temperature drop, barometric pressure going through the roof. On Saturday, the 14th is what it was going to be. Just climbing all day, northwest winds, just exactly what you asked for. I was definitely going to be hunting that day, but kind of was a little unsure about it from the fact that I hadn't been getting many pictures of these deer in a while. So that day I was kind of thinking towards hunting the hay farm just for the fact that I really hadn't, and just wanted to see what was out there, if any deer hadn't been on camera that were out there. And, Josh actually gave me a buzz like before the hunt, and he's like, "So what are you doing tonight?" And I told him, my plan was to go to the hay farm. And he's like, "Well, man, at the end of the day, this public land spot is one that really well. It's one that you have two big deer on pretty consistently."
That's the PG
And
version. Let's be real. And I was like, so the reason why I was calling Gavin is because it's like you have $2 of a lifetime on a piece of public land. And we had talked about the night before, he was just so demoralized. And I think that it's important to kind of set the stage because, again, I think we know every detail to these situations, but where Gavin is hunting is, number one, it's like a jungle, and so one of the things that he talks about is all those times that he was going in there hunting, every single time he's bumping deer.
Mm-hmm.
And, when I called you and I was like, "So what's your plan?" You're like, you didn't say I'm just going to the hay farm. You're like, "Dude, I have literally blown up this piece of public.
Mm-hmm.
I've ran them out. It's over." Like, it wasn't a very positive outlook, And so, and I was like, "Why are you going to the hay farm?" And you're like, "Well, there's these deer that weren't on camera 365 days ago that might be there tonight." And I was like, "That is a dumb idea. Don't do that." And I felt kind of bad because I was like, "What do you mean?" Because I'm like, and Gavin's being modest. These aren't just good big deer. Like, they're both 160 class and above. The bigger of the two might be in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're giant deer, public, private, Iowa, Missouri. It doesn't matter where you are. And I think it needs to be said, it's like Gavin is modest, but you are putting yourself in a position to be on deer of this caliber year in, year in, you know what I'm saying? So it's a big kudos to you, but what was it in the conversation that finally convinced you, I guess? I mean, because the camera thing, I think, was something that stuck out to you.
Yeah, I think one of the bigger things was you were saying something along the lines of like, "Dude, it's public land. Like, anybody could go in there tonight, go into exactly where you're at and shoot that deer if he comes out, or just blow it up. Either way, at the end of the day, it's public land and anybody can access it. And so it's that chance that it could be ruined the next day. And so you never want to just like assume that it's going to be good to go the next day. You always just want to assume that somebody's going to be in there, and, things might change. And so that was a big thing for me. It was just like, at the end of the day, you just got to sometimes go for it. So,
yeah, no, I think that'd be cool to get your take, Mike and Owen. Like, you're hunting public land. How do you treat it? If it was me answering that question, like when I predominantly hunted in 2018, 2019 public, my thought, and the first off, we're in Iowa. Public land in Iowa, we're very aware, is probably not the same situation as a Michigan or, a lot of states throughout the country. There's not a lot of hunters in Iowa. There is a lot of really good, well taken care of, managed land in Iowa as far as our public land goes. So, before anybody says this isn't like my state, we know we're very lucky to live in Iowa.
mm-hmm.
But that being said, to me, I feel like we might give them a little bit more credit as animals. They're still deer.
Yeah.
And they're still very, my approach was always, what are they tolerant of? And what are they used to? And more importantly, where are they going to be less tolerant of it? So that's my thought process is always like, well, if I want to try something, I'm going to do it because somebody else might. And if I try to treat it like a piece of, potential private ground where I'm the only hunter, I think you might be, beating yourself without even, taking a shot. But Mike, I know you've hunted a ton of public land throughout the years. I don't know if my approach is ignorant and risky, but
I mean, you got to learn somehow, right? I mean, public, I mean, I grew up hunting public. I hunted public for over a decade, and you're certainly more gung ho the younger you are, and when you're first doing stuff, you're charging in, and I mean, like I say, you got to learn somehow. I mean, I think the key is you don't miss your good opportunities, like that ideal weather front, that sort of, hey, that front's coming through, whatever's been happening out there. Most publics you sort of assume, especially the smaller ones in Iowa, if they're a couple 100 acres, there's people going in and out of there. The deer might be a little more used to human intrusion and human scent and people walking around and things like that. Certainly there's some risk that, yeah, you blow it up. But I mean, I think if you're sitting in the middle of October and that front you've been wanting for a few weeks is there, I mean, that's the time to go in there, obviously. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of 6 one way, half dozen the other. I got to the point where I was trying to get into bigger publics and get far away from parking lots and get to those more isolated areas where I wasn't encountering as many people, and you kind of hunt less disturbed deer. And that was how I migrated to having more success on public later. But every piece is different. I mean, there's so many factors to consider. And I think in general, it's good to try stuff. And just because you blew them out one day, I mean, hell, yeah. Those jungle ones are so thick. I mean, there's so many factors to consider. And I think that good weather's worth going in there and trying.
Owen?
I'd just say that I'd probably be just a little more aggressive than what I am sometimes. I mean, I'm probably not setting out an October cold front. I mean, I'm going to be in there just because other people are going to be in their potential to be in there and kill the buck you're after. So, I'm probably going to hunt it a little harder than I normally would. And I would start out the same as I always have, even back 25, 30 years ago when I hunted public. I sat there with the topo map, looking it over, looking for water a lot of times. Here's a pond, they got to go around. I would do all that stuff just like that, back then. And, that's where I would start with access, on Gavin's piece too, and see if there's a good way to access it, But, so I wouldn't do things a lot different, maybe just a little more aggressive is all I would say.
Yeah.
And not more aggressive than what you're doing, Gavin. I'm just saying for how I normally hunt.
Mm-hmm. And I would argue, Gavin, you're not really being that aggressive. I mean, I hope this doesn't sound like you're just tromping in and sitting down on the ground, being like, "This sounds great. Hope he walks by." I think that this is what, year 3 on this piece.
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
familiar. You're not dealing with a lot of change. I mean, a flood would probably be your biggest, concern as far as changing the deer movement. And what Mike and Owen both just said is it's pretty much the conclusion we talked about, because, you had made the mention there's no deer on camera, or they haven't been. And I was like, well, what was the time in between that previous front that you got the photos? And you said, it was about a week. And I was like, if he's going to do it, maybe it's today. Mm-hmm. And I remember you're like, all right, I'm getting off the phone. Talk to you later. Leave me alone. And you just jetted off the phone. And well, that's when the good stuff happens.
Yeah. So when we're talking about a jungle, I mean, this is, like I said, a river bottom type piece. It's a lot of willows, willow thickets that are almost like, if you ever seen videos of bamboo forests, it's like, trees stacked super tight together. And, these deer just have so much cover that they can kind of be in. And so it makes for a great piece. And so this spot that we've been hunting, it had, one of those big willow thickets, I'd say about an acre in size, somewhere along those lines, a big chunk where deer could definitely hold up in, right next to a nice little flat, about an acre in size as well, of bur oak trees. Not super tight. They're kind of scattered around, but enough that it would be a nice draw for deer. And they were, I'm sure everyone's heard that, this year, these the trees are producing tons of acorns this year. And that's the case in this spot. And, so it sets up perfectly. And so, I was thinking, going into it, it's just going to be a matter of time. I just got to put my time in to hunt this spot. Thanks to Josh for convincing me to go back out there, or talking me through it at least. Anyway, so
nice. I felt so bad about it when we got out.
No, it ended up making something happen. That's for sure. So we go back out there. I did go. I think it was the day before season started, and went in that area. It was a nice windy day, hot and whatever, midday, and walked out an access path. There's like a little clearing where you could walk through and kind of not walk through the main river bottom where deer could potentially bed. And so it ended up working out really nicely as far as access from that standpoint. And we were following that same exact access point in and out every single time. And so I feel like that little bit of consistency, thinking back on it, was good from the standpoint of not just walking through the whole piece, just sticking to that same route, and doing it that way. But we make our way in there. It's windy and everything, the front blowing through, and get in, set up cleanly. Ended up sitting on the ground. I brought my stand in and actually just carried it in halfway and left it because I was going to sit the following morning at another spot just around the corner from that, and just didn't feel like sitting a stand that night for whatever reason. And so we get set up on the ground. It was a spot that I'd scouted in the past, found that it was decent. There was decent cover around. It was a little thicker actually when we went and hunted it than when I'd previously scouted it. So, wasn't really expecting that, but either way, we made a good setup. And from there on, we had a pretty much terrible hunt. I didn't see a single deer. I was just hemming and hawing with Dragos about like, man, I'm sorry for dragging you out here.
Gosh, idiot. Gosh, why did I listen to you?
Yeah. But anyway, so we're sitting there, and was it 15 or so minutes before light, just glassing, just looking around, it's that prime time. You're definitely on higher alert, and ended up spotting that buck, that 6x5, the one that I had been getting pictures of consistently through September up to that point, not the other one that popped up. Spotted him. Well, first I just spotted a body with its head down. You could tell it was a deer, obviously, and it was clearly feeding on the acorns. Then he picks his head up. I was like, yep, no mistake in that one. He's got a really long G3 on his left side that's kind of curly or wavy almost. And so he's just super easy to spot. Anyway, so I was like, there he is, Dragos. He's right there at 50 yards. And so he's in no hurry at all. He's just munching on acorns. You can hear him. It had calmed down at that point, so you can hear him cracking on the acorns, which I love. I just hearing that sound, or even I've gotten close enough to hear, deer breathing and things like that, or like, sniffing the ground or whatever. I think that stuff is cool. But anyway, so he's chilling out there at 50 yards and slowly working his way towards us. And it's getting to about 10 minutes before legal shooting light. And he's down in this little spot where we had been set up the previous cold front. So about, a week or so before, in a tree. And so really, if I had just brought the stand all the way in and sat there, he would have been right underneath us at 10 yards, of course, but that's how it goes always. But he ends up just hanging out in that little area. It's this little clearing right next to all the oak trees. And so the acorns are just falling in, and they have this area just matted down where all these deer have been clearly just hammering the acorns. So he's hanging out there, and then I have my bow in my hand the whole time. For whatever reason, just look back to Dragos, make sure he's good to go. And we're communicating this whole time. And then I look back to where he's at, and I don't see him. I'm looking, and then all of a sudden I hear a stick break, and he's coming right up behind us. And there's basically a little lane. We were, if I'm facing where he was at, we were set up to shoot this way to the left, and he was coming in from the right. And so he was going to basically backdoor us. But there was a little lane to the right where I could shoot. And I had actually, while he was sitting there eating acorns, I actually ranged it. There's just a little dead tree where, just thinking on the off chance he walks up there, I could, I have that already ranged and ready to go. So sure enough, that's exactly what he does. Ends up going behind the tree. Well, this is 5 minutes before legal light with plenty of leaves on the trees and everything. And so it's dark at that point. Not dark enough to where, it's totally unreasonable to shoot, I felt, but definitely getting darker. And he's coming up and, just kind of walking slowly, but at a good pace. And he gets behind that dead tree, and I stand up thinking that that's going to be my best opportunity to shoot him. And he's going to end up right there at about 20 yards. And that's what I had ranged that dead tree at. He's behind it. And so I kind of misjudged the situation as far as thinking that he's basically in line with that. Ends up being a little bit further at about 24, I think is what we measured it at. He stops naturally. I take a shot and, hear a loud pop, hear a loud thud, almost like a diaphragm hit. I've heard it plenty of times in videos, and that's what it sounded like to me off the bat. That was my first thought. And he runs off. stops at about 20 or 30 yards in this little opening, this little gap in the trees that I can see through, looks back over his left shoulder and just stares in the direction of us for about 20 or 30 seconds. Kind of hunches up a little bit. I've seen deer hunch a lot more when they're injured a lot more, but clearly was like in pain a little bit and walked off. I was able to watch him through that little gap in the trees, walk off for about 60 yards, 70 yards or so. Had a slight limp to him, whatever, because clearly in a little bit of pain. And so from there on, just lost him or whatever. And, at that point, I knew that off of that reaction, he's not just lethally hit, lung shot, perfect. Obviously, that's pretty obvious to know. But I definitely hit him at the same time. And so we call Josh and Rye, get them on a group call. And so I explain the situation to them. And, of course me specifically, I shake like no other. I mean, I shake so bad and get, really hopped up on adrenaline. And so I'm freaking out and full of emotions and everything. And this is one thing that I really appreciate about this team is having guys that are really knowledgeable that I'm able to consult with and, talk these things through. And being in that moment, it was like a blessing in the fact that they were there with a clear mind. And I was, of course, just losing mine. And they kind of, their initial reaction after explaining it was hold the phone. Let's probably just back out. Don't even worry about going to look for the arrow. It's not going to do you any good at this point, knowing his reaction, and just, take your time getting out, make a loop around, and just try to be as quiet as you can in case he just went and bedded down real close and he's right there and you don't want to, obviously get him up. So we did that. We ended up going back to Rye's house, and Josh was nice enough to make the drive all the way out and meet us there. And so we go over the footage, and basically I had obviously stood up, like I said, and was able to see enough of him to shoot. Now there was canary grass, just some grass at about maybe knee level on me that he was in, but definitely not quite enough to just cover his whole body and make it feel like totally uncomfortable to shoot. But at the camera's level, he's sitting, Dragos is sitting down, and the camera's at about knee level for me, at maybe a little bit higher. And so the shot is pretty much straight on, and basically all of his vitals are covered by the grass. And so we get back, and we had looked at it in the field, and you just can't really tell on the camera screen what it looks like. But we get back to Rise, and we're looking at it, and you can't see anything. You can't see impact. You can't see anything. I could see the arrow in a couple frames just flying through the air before it actually, right after I shot, basically. But other than that, nothing. No grass parting, no anything. And so we're basically going in blind as if we had never even filmed it from the standpoint of knowing where the impact was. So we just decided to play it on the safe side, wait the full 12 hours till the next morning. And at the very least, we just wanted to go in right at first light, look at the impact site, try to find the arrow, and try to find some blood where he had stopped about 20 yards up, and just kind of make a game plan from there. So we get there, don't find the arrow at first. You want to say something?
No, I was going to say, I mean, we really weren't basing it 12 hours. And I think we weren't necessarily going in blind. I mean, we were going off of what every hunter, and that's where I think there's some value here, is like, there's so much importance to follow the animal with your eyes and see what they do. Because even though we didn't have the arrow, we could rule out a lot of things based on what you saw. We know it wasn't a heart shot. We know it wasn't a lung shot. And, so now all of a sudden, the mentality is treat it worst case scenario. And if it was a gut shot, I mean, 12 hours is still probably not a guarantee that they're going to be dead by any stretch. We're treating it as potentially liver gut. And, going in the next day, it wasn't to track the deer, it was to find the arrow. There was two spots: find the arrow and see where the animal was when you saw him stand. Because in Iowa, you can use a tracking dog now, and so it was like if we couldn't deduce anything from those two things, we're still not tracking, So I just wanted to be clear to the viewer, or the listener, I should say, 12 hours was not like, oh, he's dead by then. Let's go and just go, see what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty calculated. So
yeah, we were just wanting to go in there and kind of feel out the situation more or less, just see if we could basically get any more information about it and make a plan from there essentially. So
yeah,
we, walked up, didn't find the arrow initially, and ended up just going up to that spot where he had stopped and didn't find a single drop of blood from there at that point. And so went back, looked around for the arrow some more, ended up finding it, and it was mostly buried. It had been a clean pass through, went a good, 5-6 yards, would you say, Josh, like past where he was at, maybe even a little bit more. And
yeah,
was buried most of the way under the dirt. And so the majority of the arrow was wiped off. There was no signs of anything on it except for the fletchings. The fletchings just had a little bit of blood. Didn't have that greasy feel that you get with a gut shot or that stink you get. And so a little bit perplexed by that, but also, still thinking that worst case scenario and just want to still play it safe. So made the decision to just back out and get a dog, like Josh said, knowing that that's legal now and everything, that you have that at your disposal. I wanted to do what I could to make a clean recovery. And I felt like a tracking dog would be better than going through that willow, that river bottom mess and tromping through there, potentially kicking them up, all these things. Wanted to just play it safe. So ended up just leaving, giving him a bunch more time, got a hold of a tracking dog, a nice guy from not too far away. And he was available to meet that afternoon. And so by that point, by the time we ended up heading back out there to the public, it was about 20 hours after the shot at that point. And so, he was saying a gut shot, generally you want to wait about 18 to 24 is what he was saying. And a couple other people had said. And, I think we were in that range and felt safe enough to at least go give it a shot, go proceed forward and at least try to find some blood, find some sort of sign to point us in the right direction. So got out there with him. It's about a mile walk in there, and he didn't seem too happy about having to do that, but he was a great guy, super helpful and everything. We get back there and start the track and still don't find any blood at all. And no sooner do we get 3 hours into the track when we're just like scratching our heads like, man, like how are we not finding anything? No blood, no beds, no anything, no sign of anything. And he had other things to do, and so he had to take off. And I felt like at that point we probably would have found something if we were going to find him. And so felt confident at that point that either he was alive or he was just completely off the map or something. So at that point ended up heading out at about 6 p.m. 5 or 6 p.m. And that was kind of, that point where we hit, where we were like, man, not really sure what else we can do at this point, So from that point on, I've been obviously monitoring cameras, hoping that he shows back up. We went out a couple times now looking for buzzards. I didn't go through there and just go grid search it on the chance that he is still alive. Hopefully he is and he shows back up, and that will obviously be a huge sigh of relief, but didn't want to just potentially go in there and push him out basically after doing a grid search. So yeah, here we are. It's definitely a bummer. It's at the end of the day, it's one we worked hard for. It's dragging Dragos in there every day, mile in, mile out, and hanging sets and sweating and all that stuff. And, we had the opportunity. It was the deer read the script at the end of the day. It was exactly what you would want. Just didn't didn't end up working out. So going to still, hold out hope that we can somehow find him, whether it's dead or alive, and kind of keep everybody updated going forward. But that's pretty much where we're at now. So
that's a tough situation, Gavin. I mean, obviously we've all been there. Hopefully, like you said, hopefully it was just a low hit or something, a flesh wound, and dug the arrow down, and he'll show up on camera here shortly and you can keep chasing him. And if not, if it was truly like your story of hitting him and how he walked off and hunching up, it does make it sound like it's a back hit. So,
right.
If that is the case and he's not up on camera in the next few weeks, we should all go get in there and try to locate him and see if we can't find him. But I mean, is there anything now you've had some time to think about it, and anything you do different or takeaways or things like that?
Yeah, I think one of the bigger things, and it's funny because I was actually obviously editing Owen's kill right after the situation happened, and one of the things he mentions in his closing interview of the first encounter with Loch Ness the day before he ends up shooting him is, he had him at 55 yards or so, I think is what you said, and didn't feel like taking a shot would be worth it because in your experience, when you had taken shots in low light in the past, that was generally when you had made a majority of bad hits or something along those lines. And of course, I'm editing that after the fact, and I'm like, man, and that definitely sat there and thought about that one for a second. And so, I for sure had enough light to still see my pins, still see the deer clearly. But at the end of the day, in that low light of a situation, you're aiming for body. You can't really pick a spot and aim small, miss small, as they say, and just try to and get it exactly where you want it. And so that's basically the situation I was in. I was just aiming for body and hoping that it hit right. And I think that that's probably the biggest thing that I've taken away from this is, at the end of the day, like you don't want to just like take a shot to just take it. I don't think I forced anything necessarily, but it could have been one of those situations where it's like, just let him go. If I was in that situation again, knowing what I know now, probably would have just let him go and hoped that, because he had no idea we were in the world. I mean, he had no idea we were there. And so definitely a great chance that we could have gotten another crack at him in that same little area in a better scenario as far as light and everything is concerned. So that's probably my biggest takeaway. Otherwise, at the end of the day, I feel like we did everything right after the fact. Being able to watch him was super important, to read his body language and everything and make a decent assessment from there. But between backing straight out, not pushing in to try to retrieve the arrow, find any blood or anything like that, backing straight out, going to assess the situation, especially because we had footage, and ended up getting a dog, things like that, like doing everything we can in the first place rather than like after the fact to recover this deer cleanly. I think we did do a good job of that, making the right moves along the way after the shot, knowing how it all went down. But at the end of the day, just probably was something like a low hit, being a little further than what I expected. I think that the odds are that it was a lower hit and probably a good chance that he's alive. So those are probably my biggest takeaways. Or I guess the one takeaway plus comfortability in the fact that we did pretty much everything right. So.
Yeah, I think another good point you could make too, Gavin, is maybe you didn't make a good shot, but you took a good shot. There's so much to be said for that.
Yeah.
You can play that over in your mind a million times. If you take a good shot, I could rest easy with that. Maybe things didn't go the way you wanted, but there's a lot of bad shots you can take that we all know, terrible angles, and levels of darkness. We've all got to decide, what's too dark for us or our eyes or whatever. So you brought up a good point there as well. Anytime I've made a bad shot, it's almost always been in low light. And so, we all got to be thinking about, just because you can see the deer, you can see a dark object, should we be taking that shot? And I'm not saying that in your case, it looked like pretty good light, but I know I've been there a lot of times. I'm sure we all have. So good points.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. And I was just telling Gavin in the blind today how I've recently just been go out at last light in my yard. I'm shooting at a target with a white dot where I can actually see it, and how hard it is to group tightly, where I'm like, I can see my pin, I can see the white dot. And you would think like I should be able to drill these in there, and you're floating. And so your group expands. And so even whenever you think, this is good, I can see my pins, I can see the deer, and you're trying to figure out, well, why did I not make a good shot? Like, it's not that it's so dark you can't see him, or you're just shooting at a blob or whatever, that's a different situation. So like, it looks like it's a good shot, but it ends up being, there's a higher error rate with it because of that low light. And I think it's fascinating. I mean, I keep practicing it, thinking, man, what the hell, I should be able to hit better right here. And it's so it definitely makes you want to, you have these experiences, it makes you want to pull back and be like, let's live to fight another day, but yeah, like you said, hopefully he shows back up and you can keep chasing him.
That would definitely be the ideal scenario for sure, but we will definitely see. I mean, if anything, there's a great chance he shows up this upcoming weekend, not this one, but the following. So getting into that last few days of October, I mean, the weather front is looking prime time of year and everything. So you would think in a perfect world, that's when he's going to be on his feet. But we'll just have to see. Maybe it'll be before that, maybe it'll be after that, but we'll see. So
we'll be looking for that update.
Oh yeah.
We'll have to go through another phone call and not wait to get him on camera again. Just go kill him.
No, your saying of like, don't wait for the camera, be the camera is a great one. And that's that's one thing that definitely made me want to go back in there, is like, at the end of the day, people rely nowadays so much on cameras, and I find myself doing it all the time. Like, you just get sucked into like, oh, I got the picture of him here, I got the picture of him there, or didn't. And you just base all your information off of that, rather than just going in when the time is right. You're confident in the setup, confident in your access, confident in, the deer being there regardless. Like, at the end of the day, a trail camera only collects data in a 10-yard, about, I don't know, 80, 90 degree area. Like, it's not, right. Or not more than that, maybe like 120, 150 degrees. But it's not a big area. You just can't rely on that. And so that's a big takeaway too, for sure. It's just go and hunt the right times regardless. Like, sure, there was the risk of bumping deer out of there and, things of that nature, but the timing is right, and he did it exactly what you would want, which was awesome to see. I mean, at the end of the day, you can be proud of that, of like, we did everything. We didn't bump him on the way in. He came out, he presented a shot. I mean, what else can you really ask for? So,
yeah, I think that's a perfect example there, Gavin, is don't wait for that daylight picture when you have changing weather. Yeah, fine if it's been 80 degrees all week and there's no change. Maybe you wait to get a daylight picture, but it doesn't make sense when you have these cold fronts come in, these big weather changes. That's when you're going to get your daylight picture. Mm-hmm. So why not be there? Like Josh said, be the camera. Yeah. I mean, I can't tell you how many mature bucks daylighted that 6th and the 7th when that cold front came in. When I went back and checked cameras, I'm like, oh, he daylighted. They all daylighted. And so if you're not out there, it just makes no sense.
Yeah.
And that 14th, that cold front that you were hunting, I mean, I was in this RV, cold, the heater wasn't working. I'm in the Grand Canyon, and there go cling, and I'm like, oh, DK's in daylight.
Exactly.
I'm like, what's going on in Iowa? God dang it. Yeah. we were there was no front in Utah. It was just like clear, beautiful, sunny. And then I got the tornado alerts in Iowa, and I was like, oh, there's some weather moving through there. Yeah. Anyway, mister.
Yeah. Gavin, as my good buddy would say, Kyle Karcher, don't doubt the scout.
It's true.
And that is the one thing that, like, outside looking in, getting to watch this whole scenario, it's like, I don't think you're as surprised as you probably are letting on that it came together. I mean, you spent a lot of time on that piece of property. You spent a lot of time looking at those maps, and I mean, it's just 99% there. And like I left a comment on your daily blog. It's like there's nobody more that deserves it. And I know when it does happen, we're all going to be right there on that recovery, and that's my biggest thing, is like, it's time to let it go. I mean, it's like good that it bothers you, Owen and I, and you were talking about that earlier, but like, I think it can really probably consume you in ways that don't help the next situation. So I know it's easier said than done and being where I'm at, but it's just, I think there's a mental aspect to it of like, just acknowledge it, learn from it. And, the next time you're just that much more prepared. So
yeah,
I appreciate you sharing that with us. I mean, like you said, you did everything right and it just didn't really work out. And, obviously if guys have questions about the hunt or your thought processes to where you're hunting, they can find you on the daily blog in the comments section. But big cold front coming up. I'm very excited to get home, see what happens. So
it's going to be a good one. We're starting to get close to those days when the mature bucks are going to be out nudging does around. So you're starting to get both sides of it, not just the cool weather they're out feeding, but when you start adding both of those together, stuff's going to start hitting the ground,
Magic. Can't wait.
I can't wait to get back to Iowa deer. I'll tell you.
I just got to kill one before Owen kills the second one. I can't get too far behind.
Yeah, it's the first time I've ever been in this position. I'm leading the race.
Yeah,
usually,
man.
You blow my doors off usually.
October 7th. That's good. Oh, that's awesome. I'm excited for everybody. I'm excited to hear the encounters. I'm excited for the next podcast. And, these encounters are going to start piling up. And, boy, it's going to be a fun couple of weeks here.
Yep. Yeah, hopefully on the next podcast, I can have a good ending to this trip in Georgia. We've had some awesome hunts down here at Realtree Farms. Thankful for Tyler Jordan's invite. And I think there's going to be some things that'd be cool to share because, I mean, Mike, I know you grew up in Louisiana and hunting there. I'm sure it's similar, but it is very different hunting. And I feel like I'm hunting the top tier, place in Georgia. And I feel like it is just a world of difference to Iowa. These animals they're just different. I don't even have a better word for it. They are twitchy and scared of everything and a lot smaller body size. And it's just been a very eye-opening experience. It'd be cool to talk about. Very, very thankful for it. So
I think a lot of Southerners would probably agree with you.
Yeah, no, man, it's been a good time. So Gavin, appreciate it, sir. That's not easy to talk about. I know that, but it's a lot of relatability there, whether
at the end of the day, hopefully somebody can at least learn something from it. I know I learned a ton from it, and, got to keep your head up, I guess. That's what everybody says, at least. So
yeah, apply it to the next one.
Yeah,
keep getting better. We've all been there. We're all in different stages of the process, but
yeah.
And Owen, good luck finding the one you want, pinning them down.
I'll be after him. I've got one picked out so far, so keeping tabs on him.
Oh yeah, I love it.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you guys joining this podcast with us tonight here on After Hours. And Gavin, best of luck on this cold front, sealing the deal. Owen, we'll be waiting to hear that the second tag is ready for a recovery. And Mike, DK is going to daylight, and you're going to be there.
It's going to happen, man.
Visualize that.
Gotta believe.
That's right.
All right, fellas. Well, have a good night.
Take it easy,
guys. And to end this, one thing that we'd like you to do is if there's any specific questions that we like to do a Q&A moving forward to end these, sessions. So if there's any topics, any questions that you guys have that you'd like the guys to discuss and, dive into more, please drop it in the comments section. Otherwise, we'll catch you on the next one.